Um, but so that's the plan. First, we have to kind of decide on a theme or an archetype for what we want to go. There was some that were tossed around in the Discord earlier today. Something that really tickles my dice a little bit is something with doing with the elements. I love the idea of a like a rogue that can change the element of his blade. So his sneak attack damage does a different element of damage, which could give them an additional advantage in certain circumstances. Which I think is sounds like a really fun idea. I hadn't really fleshed it out much more than that. Trying to think of what some of the other features may be, so I figure we could go through that together. Y'all can toss in your thoughts and your comments, and we'll go from there. If you have any questions or anything, let me know. I can't recommend Matt Gravelin's content enough. He wrote. We covered an episode early on in our show that was how to create a paladin or create an oath or something like that. He's done a bunch of those. I found that they've really helped me understand the overall archetypes. So one thing I like to do first when deciding on how to build my character is to go through and see kind of what the player's handbook has done. I recommend this if you've never used this. This is the OpenGL. All this content except for specific named features are open under the can be filed under the Open Gaming License, so it makes creating stuff a lot easier and safer. At least so WotC doesn't come down on me for lawsuits. So that's definitely a start. So one thing I want to look at first is I got the D&D Beyond opened here. I've already opened up the rogues features here. So in order to build a rogue, I think it's important for us to first analyze exactly what the rogue's core features are to begin. So we know that they get sneak attack, which allows bonus damage, and that's the majority of where their damage comes from. They get a utility ability at level 1 as well called Thieves' Cant. They also get cunning action, which I think is really cool because I think that leaves room open for additional options. I think a good example of that would be the thief. The thief uses cunning action and allows the thief to use like the interact with objects, like feature and stuff, which is pretty cool. Then of course at third level you get the Roguish Archetype. Fourth, 8th, 10th, 12th, 16th, and 19th they get ability improvements or feats if those are allowed in your campaigns. Uncanny Dodge at 5th, which is all about reducing damage from a target they can see. 7th is Evasion, which also is another avoidance ability. So that's basically 2 core avoidance abilities right in a row. One for physical, one for like general attacks, and then one for like AoE spell damage type and traps and stuff for dexterity saves. At 11th level, they get Reliable Talent, which is once again focus on ability checks. I mean, you can't roll lower than a 10 basically. And then so that you kind of start to see that they don't have as many offensive abilities in the class overview stats, right? The general features. Most of their like unique damage dealer comes from either sneak attack directly or a way to achieve sneak attack easier or in different unique ways. Blind sense at 14th level, they can see blind anything within 10 feet of them, whether they can see it or not, which is pretty cool. Slippery Mind at 15th is a proficiency to wisdom saves, which is great for defensive purposes. Once again, it's another defensive ability. Followed up by their 18th feature, which is no creature can attack them with advantage. That's huge. So, of all these abilities, well more than half of them are defensive maneuvers, which really gives you the evasive, avoidance style gameplay, which is really great. So we want to keep that in our mind as we're going through these. So at the very first level, we get our or the third level is when we really our archetype comes together. I haven't developed any like flavor for this or anything yet. So I always welcome that. So as we're done with working on the mechanics, then the flavor comes, the flavor text and all that comes after the fact. So the first thing we want to talk about is there's actually, I know this sounds stupid, but the naming convention. I don't know if you noticed, but all the classes do have some sort of naming convention that goes through all their classes. For instance, the Oath of the Voidwalker, or the Oath Paladin's Oath of Vengeance. The School of Binding, or the School of Illusion. There is a theme that kind of follows these basic naming conventions. In the case of the rogue, it's very much this is this particular person's skill set. If you're you burglar and you steal stuff, you're a thief. If you hunt and murder people for hire, you're an assassin. um, if you're all about creating illusions and tricking people, you're an arcane trickster. So that's a pretty straightforward naming convention. So when we come up with the name for this class, we're going to want to kind of keep that in mind. How does the name reflect the core mechanics, I guess you could say. So now at third level, how do we want to start the third level? Let's look at some of the other features that are given out to the other class archetypes on the DMG, or in the player's handbook, to see where we start. We're going to start right here at third level. So where do we got? Roguish. Okay. So the thief gets a utility ability. They get fast hands, which basically lets them use their bonus action to make a dexterity sleight of hand check. So very much utility and use the object interaction. So very much a utility ability, which is probably why they get another core ability here, which is making them swifter, faster, running, jumping, climbing, all that stuff. For the assassin, it's just a single feature, but because it's a one that increases essentially your damage per round, making you more deadly and increasing your chance of getting critical strikes, you only get really one feature. So that's important to note. When you have weaker features, it appears the Wizards of the Coast seems to offset those by giving you multiple weaker abilities and utility over to kind of equal out the more variety that you get from a single feature. Spellcasting kind of fits somewhere in between those two, I think, because as a arcane trickster, you obviously get cantrips and spell slots, which gives you all kinds of different variation. But it is worth noting that for the arcane trickster, you are like limited to the enchantment school and illusions, right? So at the third archetype, we basically are going to assume we're going to get access to two features, because I want this to be less about increasing damage directly and more about manipulation and utility. So their damage can go up, but it really depends on the style, right? The fight that they're in, right? So while assassinate, for instance, as long as you go first in combat, which you can choose your target at that point, you can almost, as long as you don't roll really poopy, can get this off pretty regularly every combat, while being able to change your weapon or element to, say, fire or lightning is only going to be beneficial in a situation where it benefits against that enemy. Most enemies are resistance to fire, others poison. Well, I think we're going to focus on elemental damage, so there is still going to be some restrictions there, but it's not going to come into play as often, I don't think, which is why I think we'll probably need another feature to kind of go with it. Do you guys have any thoughts or questions on that before we kind of move on? I'd love to hear thoughts on that. We should probably look at the Xanather Guide 2 stuff. I got that here as well. I was reading through that earlier.
Alright, so far for this archetype, we mostly just have like the concept of adding elemental damage to the attacks, correct?
Just honestly, that's kind of where it starts, but it doesn't have to be limited to that. Including the elements in any way would be really great. Like, for instance, one thing I thought about earlier was, what if while his blade is harnessed with fire, you can get like a bonus to movement speed, and it leaves a trail of fire, or things like that that are focused around the elements. That's why I mentioned that I thought the weapon doing an element of damage isn't the only feature. I think I'm having another feature that goes with it would be really good. So with the fire one, when they move, they leave, for one round, they leave a string of fire that if anybody walks through it, they take damage or something like that. Is that
sure?
But I don't want to be limited to that. That was just an idea that kind of sprang out of this elemental blade kind of idea. So
I don't know why, but I was randomly earlier thinking about what would be a fun roguish archetype, if you will.
uh-huh.
One random thought was like, what if you borrow some features, if you will, from like the Shadow Monk? You got the shadows,
Yeah, I see that. Like the one that does like the teleporting through shadows and stuff.
right? But really using more of the darkness or like fog clouds, or whatever, to destroying your enemies and give you advantage, so you can sneak attack that way,
Oh, that's interesting. That's a really interesting way to look at that. I like that.
or escape for that matter.
So that sounds like it would be you'd almost be setting yourself up for a more like a subtlety assassin or a subtlety rogue. Where I mean, all rogues are subtle, but giving them access to features that let them distort the area around them could be kind of cool.
Sure.
Like fog and like you mentioned. So, looking at the other features inside the um, my handy dandy and Xanathars. I really like. I think we've talked about this on the show. The Mastermind at 3rd level gets the ability to basically use the help action at a distance, which is pretty hardcore utility. But I think the reason they only get one is because it boosts other people's damage, which kind of makes sense. Um, Now the Scout's another one that sounds like somebody's trying to talk, but their mic's all disconnected, or is that just buzz?
I don't say anything, so
Okay. And if you got questions, feel free to jump in. So looking at the Scout, this is another one that's got 2 features at level 3. The first one is the Skirmisher, so you're difficult to pin down during a fight, and you can move up to half your speed as a reaction when an enemy enters within 5 feet of you. This movement doesn't provoke op attacks. So that's very much a utility ability, followed up with Survivalist, that you gain proficiency in nature and survival. So, and double your proficient ability when you make that use either of those proficiencies. So you're gaining expertise again, I guess. Um, so those are some really good ones that come out of that. So it sounds like if we want the elemental blade or the elemental rogue or whatever we're gonna call this, we have to come up with a mechanic that allows the person to change the element. Um, so what I do, we can start off with a broad idea before we get into the particulars of the mechanics. So let's go to back to our little thing here. Do you guys have any other ideas on that? Following that, something that might be a little different, a little more unique, something we could do better, maybe? Because it's just a general idea at the moment. So
ooh, what if we actually do blend the idea of using a elemental rogue, if you will, with like the fog cloud idea, like give you multiple options, like you were saying with the elements earlier, like do this with fire, do this with air, do this with water, and the fog cloud could be like the water option, for example.
dude, okay, so that's actually really so I like that. So what if we change this to be they're taking on like an elemental attunement, right?
Sure.
And that elemental attunement gives them access to certain spells, but I don't want to say it'll give them access to the spells, but it won't be at the cost of a spell slot like a caster. I say maybe we take a little bit of direction from the Way of the Element monk, where they convert their key um, into an element. Maybe we can convert a different resource into the casting of, say, fog. I think fog. So, what are the primary elements of damage? Right, the damage types. That would be.
Let's see here.
This is why I got this bad boy up, right? So this is why I love this SRD thing. Well, normally it goes pretty good. Oh, that didn't work very well, did it? Damage type. Give me damage type, bastards. Ah, here we go.
You talking like bludgeoning and piercing and all that stuff?
Yeah, specifically magic. So I did find it. So since the goal is to go with element, I don't think all categories fit under there. I don't think psychic fits under element. I don't feel like radiant or force fits under element. I think cold, fire, lightning, thunder, maybe.
Yeah, anything that's a force of nature kind of thing.
Yeah. I think there could be an argument made for radiant, I suppose.
Yeah, or you could use like stone and give them a slowing effect.
Okay. I see that.
Yeah.
So
Actually, the fun thing about stone would be to create like mud or something to hinder your opponent's movement to make them an easier target for you to backstab or keep them from escaping.
that's interesting. I like that. Let me start writing some of this down. So,
Now,
so does that mean we want to go outside of damage type? Because it does. We don't have to stick to this. This is just a metric, right? Because, like the stone is a really great idea for an elemental attunement. Either it slows somebody down by giving you what's the is it shape earth or shape stone? What is the let you create like little mud puddles and
shape
shit?
Earth.
Maybe it's shaper. So something like that could be really cool. I could also see it being used defensively, where when you attune to Earth, your AC goes up or something like that, but you move slower. So you're encasing yourself in like a hardened stone, very much Avatar-like when he's running around in the stone armor. But all right, so
Yep.
let's.
Maybe you could do air and give them kind of like in Warcraft, like a Misty Step sort of movement.
Or a short range flight ability.
Both of those are really good. So let's let me write this down. So shape elements. I'm gonna say shape blade elements,
Now,
but by attuning to an element.
obviously, my biggest concern would be trying to do too much that kind of steps on the arcane treasure's toes. Know what I mean?
Yeah, that I understand. And that was one of the things I was concerned about with earlier about magic. But I figure is by putting restrictions on how often they can do the elemental shift. Is it something that can only be done a certain number of times a day, or during a short rest, or during a long rest?
Or you could base it off their wisdom modifier.
Is that something that rogues put a lot of? I guess that would limit it a little bit. All
Yeah.
right, so each element
I feel like most
alters.
rogues want wisdom anyway because perception, observing the area. So whether you
So
want it to be for every short rest or long rest, that would depend on the ability. I would assume.
yeah,
So
and we can figure out the exact mechanics. I think the big thing is to come up with the core idea and mechanics first, or the idea of what we want to happen, and I can always figure out the mechanics later. So if we were to go the damage out, so originally what was in my mind, and is to include this attunement to affect their weapons damage. Now, if we change to if we start including stuff like air and stone, how can we? Would that just change the dagger's weapon into like bludgeoning by coating it in a thing of stone?
one thing we
Um,
could do is like with Earth. Obviously, there's not really an Earth element for damage, so we could probably
right.
just force for that one. But the one way we can integrate the element is, as far as I can recall, really backstab damage is just extra damage. But if we change that and made backstab damage a specific type of damage,
Instead of it being ba-
Eric, if that makes any sense.
so normally it's based on the weapons damage type, right?
Yeah.
So you attune to an element, let's say fire. When you while attuned to this, your weapon and sneak attack damage is. See, the reason I thought sneak attack would be so. Here's what I was envisioning: you hit somebody, and then you send a torrent of energy into your target, which would manipulate would be the which was how we could get away with it being whatever weapon damage plus whatever element damage.
Right.
Um, and that would means we wouldn't have to try to tweak the damage of the weapon itself, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because normally when you have at least in the monster manual, when damage is done, and it's the a weapon type damage followed by the damage type in some cases. This way, I think we can avoid that because we're not giving the weapon itself the magic damage, but the effect of the sneak attack, which is more like a magical attack instead of just a traditional sneak attack.
Here's a
So
thought.
yeah, so the next question is how many elements should we pick and which ones should we pick? We got some pretty good ideas. Let's start with some basic ones: fire, cold. Somebody mentioned air or wind. The wind one is some cool stuff because I totally can see like you mentioned the short flying or sending out blades of air or something at somebody when you swing, giving your melee weapon a ranged strike or something along those lines.
Yeah.
We had
Earth.
earth or stone or whatever. Uh,
You could,
lightning. Go ahead.
like Ian said, you could do force damage for stone, and then air you could do lightning damage.
Okay. Okay, I can see that. So that gives us 1, 2, 3. Is there any other on here before don't want to miss any?
Or we could, I'm just throwing this out there, maybe like walk back from lightning a little bit, but create some like secondary elements, if you will, by combining two main ones together, like fire and air, what would make the lightning, for example. I don't know.
Okay.
Or water and air combined makes ice.
Yeah, I see. You bring a little science into it. Getting a little. That's a little. I think that's a little more complex than I think we want to get. Especially if we compare it to some of these other features um, that are in the assassinate, for instance, or the secondary work or fast hand. So I think that in this case we want to go simplicity. So we'll keep. I think it was just the combining is getting a little fancy. I think we'll keep it straight at first, and we can delve into that later if that becomes a thing. So let's say we imbued the weapon with fire damage. What other cool effects would benefit from that if your character was to harness the element of fire into their body? What kind of benefit would you get from that? Would a simple resistance to fire be cool? Or I mentioned earlier flaming boots, and when you run, you leave a burning trail behind you that burns for a round or two.
Maybe when you back up with fire, you do like let's say like one die damage of an area effect around the stab target, which you're immune to.
Like a fire aura. That's cool. So you're heating up the area around you. Okay.
Or the guy you just shanked.
Ah, that's interesting. So you stab them, releasing a gout of fire that also does, say, the equivalent of the green flame blade effect, where the fire will leap to another target or affect targets within a range.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. What do you guys think?
Yeah. I'm coming up with ideas, but I think that they would work with other elements.
Oh, wonderful. So let's do some sort of... Alright, so I like that one. Once again, we're just going to keep it vague for now, because mechanics come later after I do a bunch of research on WotC abilities and other functions that exist, so I don't make it too terribly worded. Alright, so what comes with the aspect? We call them aspects or attunements? Attuning to a... In Guild Wars 2, you're... the mage class can attune to elements and get different effects. Is attunement an accurate term, or should it be like an aspect? What do you guys think? No? Okay, I guess it doesn't matter that much. Alright. So, cold element. What are some benefits that...
I'm multitasking here. I'm actually cutting the current on this trick video, which I'll hopefully upload in the next half hour.
Oh, that would be awesome. Thank you. Did you have some comments on that? Aspect versus attuning or something else?
Aspect makes a little bit more sense to me than attuning, but that's hardly set in stone either. So
Attunement might get confusing with attuning armor or weapons or something.
That is an excellent point. Go lay down, dog. That is an excellent point. We'll leave it at aspect. And is there any synonyms for aspect?
It can just be a placeholder for now, worst case scenario.
Yeah. Facet. Alright, so what are some effects that would come cool? If fire's the offensive ability, what are some cool effects that would come off of being an aspect of ice?
I came up with one idea, but I'm not sure if it'd be more appropriate for stone, but something that slows down your opponent as well, which would be in line with like Ray of Frost.
Okay.
Yeah, have them slowed for one turn.
Okay.
Yeah. Or take disadvantage on their next saving throw or their next dexterity check or something. So, say a spellcaster comes at them, it gives that caster an advantage on it rather than just the rogue himself.
Just disappear.
That doesn't. We can hear our show, Ian. So those are actually really good advice. So I guess the thing I didn't specify yet, and we haven't determined, is are these effects that are these effects that occur all the time, or only when the sneak attack triggers? Since that's where the gout of energy is coming from, or when it's released.
Yeah, I would say just during the sneak attack. So it's in a way similar to like cutting words or something. It's coming from that specific action, and it's not getting too overpowered.
That's what I was thinking too, actually. So.
All right, those are really good. So we got slow target like Ray of Frost and or disadvantage effect like Frostbite. So and what's great is we've got two really great examples for those. I think. Now I think it'll be worth noting that we're really gonna have to limit the number of times this effect can be used so often. Otherwise, it starts to compete with those a little too much. I think.
Yeah.
So, like, I think Ian mentioned something about the wisdom modifier. So you can tune to an element for a number of times a day equal to your wisdom modifier, and it recovers at long rest. I think that's going to be necessary for balance purposes.
Absolutely.
We're thinking long or short rest?
I'm thinking long rest currently, but I won't know until I actually run the numbers to determine whether it's valuable or accurate or not. But it definitely can't be something that happens indefinitely. Or it's a number of, I mean, if it is a number, maybe it's a number of times it can trigger during a short rest. So it doesn't matter which you're attuned to. Maybe if your wisdom's 3, you can only trigger 3 sneak attacks with an element before it's exhausted. Then you need a short rest. That even seems more feasible. Or can you only attune to one element for so long? I think that mechanic needs to be a little more fleshed out.
Do you think maybe doing it for every sneak attack could be doable? You just have to make the number small enough to make it make sense.
I would say you would have to weaken sneak attack in and of itself. Unless it's something that's at higher rate. And honestly, that's probably something that we can look at as a higher tier where it doesn't have as much of a limit. That's something that's pretty common among the higher tier abilities, is they usually benefit something. They enhance or increase the frequency of use of something that's one of the core features.
Something that's also precedented too is like the core features. A lot of them do say, and when you hit level 10 or 11, this now does this instead.
Yeah, and that may be something we can look at.
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah, like Fireball at level 3 is just how many ever D10, and then once it goes up, it's an extra die here and there as you level up.
Yep. Okay, so now we got this wind element. So first of all, since this is sneak attack, what damage would this be? Would this be force damage?
Force seems to make the most sense for me. Maybe thunder in some cases, depending on what effect we choose.
Okay, I could see force for sure. Put that there for now. All right. So what good of force? So when I think wind, I think swift. I think fast. I think enhancing the speed or mobility in some way that they can't already do. They can already dash, so just making them faster isn't really worth it. But
what about blinding the target as debris flies in their eye?
Ooh.
Blinding would actually be good with fire.
Blinding, huh? I like the idea of blinding. You're talking about blinding fire for like light wise because it's bright.
Yeah.
Or
wind, I was thinking something like you could either make them take a dexterity check or be pushed back, or if it kills the target, maybe you get to rush to the next target regardless of how much movement you have, like as long as it's within so many feet.
Huh. Those are interesting. I like those. I like the idea. Somebody said the pushback. I love the idea of like it releasing. Think. Well, I guess we could do this for Thunderwave, but I think of it releasing a torrent of wind out in a direction and making everyone not have a save to either be pushed back or knocked down. I really like that idea.
Or building off that, what occurred to me maybe is after you backstab, wind kicks in, either you or the target, you move them 10 feet in the direction of your choice.
So you manipulate their movement instead of your own.
Both, but okay, let's say, okay, I just backstab. Now I'm moving to the barbarian.
Okay, I like the rush another foe, but that's getting a little close to more damage too. So we got to be careful of that.
That's why I just said move, not damage. So.
Well, I know I'm talking about the other people's. I can't see who's actually talking. All I see is a bunch of pictures. So the other thing
maybe
that
this could grant you fly for like half of your movement too.
another thing we can do, the sorcerer at higher levels gets an ability to use its reaction to move away from an enemy. I wonder if that's something that we could utilize. Where if an enemy moves within range, you can use your reaction to quickly bolt out of there. Could be a thing too. Somebody mentioned the blinding. The more I think about that, I like that. I can envision releasing an aura releasing a gout of wind that blinds everyone in the area, or creates the condition to hide. You could just create a light, a heavy,
Pocket sand.
Yeah, like sand going up in the air. Or just creating high winds and it forces you to kind of close your eyes. I think that's pretty cool too. And we'll narrow these down more as we go too. Line / what is it? Just vision in general. Alright, so that's some pretty good ones for there. Let's move on to Earth. This, so to me, this sounds very much defensive. Whatever it is should be either it reinforces the user's defense AC maybe, or maybe somebody mentioned creating like a mud pocket that slows everything in the area once the power is released and creates like a off the top of my head, I'm thinking like the entangled roots ensnaring effect, the snare spell. And everything in it has like half movement and must make a save to be able to get out of it, or like a strength save to pull themselves out. That's kind of what I'm thinking. What do you guys got?
You could make it where if somebody tries to move out of that spot, they'll fall prone.
That's a pretty good one. That almost sounds like ice though. Like that'd be a good one for cold, wouldn't it?
You could also do an Earthbender thing where it brings up something to hide behind and grants you +2 AC or +5 AC.
Oh, a boulder of cover. That would be the dopest thing ever. Would it stay there or would it just go away after a round?
I would say just for maybe one turn until the rogue's next turn.
I like that. I'm gonna add, up here on the cold. I'm gonna add the fall down here too, because I think that's a really good potential release too. As anybody in the area could fall. I'm gonna add. So I think that's a good. So mud slow. I love the boulder of cover. Right. That's pretty cool.
Or like a petrifying venom or something. If you slash them, it releases that into their blood and slows their movement for the next round or something.
Interesting. That's pretty cool. Petrify's pretty powerful though, so I would say that you'd have to hit the same target multiple times, just like when Medusa looks at somebody, it takes a couple save failures, doesn't it?
Yeah, it wouldn't have to fully petrify them, but just slow their movement by half or something, or
I like that.
So they can't either run away, or if they were targeting somebody more squishy, they couldn't rush to that target.
Gotcha, bitch. I love it. I love it. All right, what do we got for lightning? For lightning, this I think would be a really good one for like Misty Step as a potential a feature they could access. Something similar, allowing them to teleport when they hit somebody if they want with the feature. I think. I mean, I think speed. I think teleportation. What do you guys think?
A 10-foot teleport, maybe.
Yeah.
That's kind of like, yeah.
I like that
Yeah,
short teleport.
It's like Thunderstep, but
Ah! I love it when people say my stuff. I love that. That's awesome. Thunderstep from the Stormhound, right? Is that what that was from? No? Maybe?
Remember?
I think the Stormhound had that. Where I combined the teleportation and thunder wave, I think. Or I saw that somewhere else and claimed it as my own. I've done that before on accident.
but
Go ahead.
it definitely wouldn't have to be crazy far. Just it could take place or give a better bonus to disengage for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe it allows them to damage the person as a reaction to disengage.
Ooh, you make a good point. I think that it would be a good. Well, we'll already use the reaction a lot though. The reaction. So you could give another use to reaction. What if, while channeling it and somebody strikes you, you could use your reaction to release a gout of electricity to shock them. That would be a trade-off between taking less damage with your reaction and doing more damage with your reaction too.
Yeah.
What about stunning or paralysis? Those might be too powerful.
Rate them all. Yeah, I was thinking about that as well, but that seemed too close to the stone.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, okay, yeah, because it does the petrify movement, right?
Yeah.
So we've definitely already had quite a few overlaps already. So
yeah, and we'll you start wide and then you slowly narrow in, right?
Curate.
You
How
don't
about
want to
something
take
like
away.
Fairy Fire, where they light up and give advantage
Okay.
on the next hits.
Oh, somebody just won the internet. Who was that?
Good.
That's beverage tea.
Beverage Tea. That is awesome. I love that. Fuck this stunning shit. Fucking Fairy Fire. And we don't even gotta call it Fairy Fire. We can just make it a feature that does that.
Yeah, it's like it's Fairy Fire, and then what's the cleric one? The
I spell that wrong?
yeah,
No, I didn't.
clerics have one where they next takes
Guiding bolt.
advantage to guiding bolt. Yeah, it could be the same effect as a guiding bolt.
Ooh. What if your lightning let you do it at a range and was like the Fairy Fire / Guiding Bolt? That's cool.
Yeah.
I like those. Those are really fit the flavor, right? Because we can easily change it from sparkly pixie dust to fucking crackling lightning.
Yep.
I love it. What if? I like this. I think. What if you did a short teleport and every? Well, no. I'm coming back to the Fairy Fire. That's just that and the Guiding Bolt idea are great. I love that. That is almost perfect for that element. All right, and we got Thunder.
Because I mean, the cool thing about it too is that you get your sneak attack by having somebody adjacent to them. So that also gives it could give advantage to range attacks, but it could also benefit the person that's already benefiting you by letting you sneak attack.
Yeah, I like that because you can't sneak attack as long as you have advantage, right?
Yep.
Very cool. What about thunder? What do we think? I'm roaring, thunder, booming, loud. Obviously, pushback comes definitely stabbing somebody and sending a pushback just makes sense. Releasing a thunder wave, basically. It may not do extra damage, but it could knock everyone down or push them back.
What about having something similar to like a booming blade kind of thing, where basically it puts them into a position where if they start trying to move, they take more damage?
That's a good one. I like that. I love that you guys using existing mechanics. You know how much easier that makes my life?
Yep.
I'm a big fan of reusing stuff somebody else has already mastered. Booming Blade example, I like that.
Maybe deafen or silence too.
Ooh.
Definitely deafened.
The deafened one definitely tickles my dice. I like that. How would you bring silence into it?
They can't. If you're targeting a caster, then it would not let them trading off your damage versus them not being able to damage. I mean, you might be fighting a terrible wizard that could nuke everybody with the next fireball or something, but if you silence them, that's.
But how would the thunder create a situation of silence? I guess. Like the deafening makes sense because you're you're breaking their eardrums, right?
Yeah.
I like the silence, and I feel like we should be able to do something with that. We just got to find one that fits.
Maybe they would have to roll against a wisdom thing or be too afraid to talk.
That's not bad. All
I'm
right.
trying to figure out how it would affect their voice in a way. Maybe it.
Because I don't think they need to hear their own voice or anything when they speak. I think they just have to utter the words.
Yep.
So I feel like that one would be a little hard, but I'm gonna put it on there because I feel like that's a really good one if we can find a way to fit it in. So far I think we've got a pretty good start here for core features. I feel like we've got a decent idea fleshed out, right? So the goal is to be able to give them a way to control the element of their sneak attack, so it's no longer just slashing or piercing damage, but now it's piercing my short sword piercing damage plus fire plus thunder plus earth is hard. That's gonna be see wind and earth.
Yeah.
Earth, I think we would have to change to bludgeoning.
Makes sense.
Like a rogue that's just bludgeoning people to death. Well, okay, so they stab them and fucking boulders just and squish on top of them. So I think bludgeoning would be the one would work.
It could still be piercing, even. I mean, there's sharp.
Oh yeah.
It could change the blade to obsidian, and that's one of the sharpest things in the world.
Yeah, it's a good point.
True.
Get it? It's a good point. See what I did there?
There you go.
Well, that's just about to start, so adios.
All right, see you later, man. All right, so we've got a really good ground rules. Do we want to go and flesh that out, or do we want to poke some ideas for some of the other level spells or features? What do you guys think? Some good ideas, thanks. I appreciate it.
Sorry.
All right, so let's focus on fleshing this out, and then we can. Wow, it's already been an hour. I don't know if you noticed, this takes me a while sometimes.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and flesh this out some more. So I guess the real secret would be how do we want to do this? That was a Critical Role accidental reference. So generally at this level, you're also given proficiencies based on some of the other skills or features we were looking at. So let's go back to here. This one gives you that just gives you extra movement. No longer costs extra movement. This gives you access to use your thieves' tools and stuff as a bonus action. This doesn't give you anything extra, but you do get a bonus proficiency here with Disguise Kit and Poisoner's Kit. So with this theme, what would be some good proficiencies that go with it, do you think? Anyone at all? Nobody? Bueller?
Disguise. Something with the disguise kit could be cool.
Okay. And what from this theme... What from this theme suggests disguise?
What's the race of dwarves that have the rocky skin?
The Snurf Neblin? No, that's a gnome. Deep gnome? I don't know.
I was thinking like...
Is it the Duergar that you're thinking of?
Could be.
I think you're right. I think it's Duergar.
Yeah, it could be deep gnome.
Deep Gnomes have rock skin for sure. The Snurf Nebulum.
Yeah.
So Disguise Kit is a possibility. Does that apply by any of the other archetypes? Let's go back to here. So you get the Disguise Kit with the Assassin, and the Arcane Trickster doesn't give you anything. What about the ones in this book? Sorcerer, Rogue. There we go. So in the Xanathar's Guide, that one doesn't give you any proficiencies. What about the Mastermind? You can mimic people's names and you get a new language. 2 new languages.
Because I was thinking with the disguise, it might actually alter your appearance as well. Like channeling fire might make your eyes glow. Channeling earth might give you the dust off of your skin, kind of like the deep gnomes.
I smell what you're stepping in. I can see an argument for that. What about skills? I think Arcana would probably fit, right?
Yeah. I mean, you got a deep knowledge of, deep experience with it.
Yeah, so we'll
Or
put...
nature.
Ooh, nature's a good one.
Yeah. Maybe could give you the skill of understanding primordial if you've got that close interaction with elements.
I like that. Nature and learn primordial language. How's that? So now we're changing this from from like a magical element to like a nature-based, raw, natural elemental control, as opposed to what I was thinking, which is like a magical energy. I like that. So that's something that could drive the story and the character design, or the lore design, I think.
It's a hippie rogue.
It's a hippie rogue. They're so in touch with the primordial energies, they can tap into it and harness it through their blades. So, I guess that brings us to the next question. Is this something that only applies through melee weapons? Or is this something, these aspects be harnessed through ranged weapons as well? That's a tough
I don't
one.
see. It is a tough one.
Because it really comes down to how we want to approach this. I think... Go ahead. Sound like you're going to say something.
Like if you are going to use a crossbow or something, you're really nerfing yourself if that's going to be your chief weapon. So it almost has to work with both ranged.
Yeah.
But hard sell.
I mean, but that's also like picking the archer fighting type and then not using a bow.
Yeah.
You're more than capable of using those, but you're opting not to. I would say we'll leave it as a weapon for now, and if I find anything broken about that, because now part of the idea behind it was sending the energy through your weapon into your enemy. Is it gonna work? Would it be this? Well, you could charge up an arrow with your power and then release it. It's just you're attuning yourself to the elements and releasing it through your weapon. So that we'll assume both weapons for now. All right, so we've got fire here. Let's narrow this down a little bit. We've got some sort of AoE around the target or the character. So basically, we're taking fire, and it's going to be a little bit of an amplify of damage in some way, shape, or form. Away or either... Man, I'm trying to avoid the increase in damage, though. Maybe... What is the what if it just does it damage to 8 targets around you, fire damage based on like your wisdom or your charisma modifier? Kind of like the fuck is that weapon attack called? The Green Flame Blade. It does extra damage to an adjacent enemy based on your modifier, doesn't it? Anybody know?
I'm not familiar with it.
I don't know that I have the.
Pretty sure that it is that, yeah.
We can Google really quick to make sure that I'm not tripping on balls. So we're gonna do it's Green Flame Blade, right?
Yep, green dash flame blade.
Yeah, there it is. Evocation. The internet has everything, even if it shouldn't have everything. So on a hit, the target suffers attack as normal, and the energy leaps to a target with different creature of your choice you can see within 5 feet. Where's the rest of the spell?
Second creature takes fire damage
There it
equal to
is.
your spellcasting modifier.
Yes. So so now if we're getting into, I would say we're not going to call it spellcasting modifier equal to, what would make more sense? If you're tapping into nature's energy, that would certainly be wisdom based, wouldn't it? Or would it be charisma based?
Nature is wisdom, isn't it? I would say wisdom.
I think nature's intelligence, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
Druids are wisdom.
Yeah. So
Nature is intelligence. You're right. Yeah, I could see intelligence or wisdom based on like it being very like elemental, like the druids kind of thing, but also like nature for the intelligence.
So
Yeah.
here's what I'm thinking. If we make it wisdom or intelligence, we're asking the rogue to split their stats between dexterity, charisma because of deception and persuasion, and wisdom, which is, or I think I just confused myself. Charisma, which is persuasion, and
Deception, I think you were right.
oh, okay. For some reason I thought I was wrong. And then wisdom, which is their perception. So do we want to, even though it would make more sense to be either intelligence or wisdom, push it towards charisma just because that's more likely they're to take that stat as like a secondary?
Yeah. What stat does like checking for traps use? Because I mean that could be
Wisdom.
that intelligence. That's wisdom. So I mean,
So wisdom probably would be fine then, I
wisdom,
think.
yeah, because
Okay.
rogues are usually
Would it be-
sneaking ahead, checking for traps or disarming and stuff, which is dexterity. But
Would you use wisdom for the checking for traps for perception, or would you use the intelligence for investigation?
It depends. If it's a passive inspection, god damn it, you guys are making this harder. If it's passive inspection, then it's wisdom. If they're actively looking for the trap, it's investigation. Both of which are different in modifiers.
Right.
I'm gonna say that let's go with wisdom just because I feel like, well, no, man. Yeah, let's stick with wisdom because I don't want to delve down that road of, well, intelligence is already worthless. Now he gave me ability that's cool, but it only affects the one feature. I think that that's a tough sell. We'll put it as wisdom for now, and I'll go around on some forums and get some feedback as well and see what people think. And we can always change it no matter at any point. So we'll still leave it at wisdom for now, just because I'm kicking myself in the dick because I already can bitch and complain that wisdom is too potent of a power, and intelligent doesn't get enough love. We'll leave it as wisdom for now. All right, so the way I think I want to treat that is exactly like Green Flame Blade. So I'm just going to put that right there, and I'll figure out the wording later. Except it'll be an AoE. Because Green Flame Blade, the cantrip, only affects one additional creature. I think this one affecting multiples would be pretty cool. But it's only going to ever do modifier worth of damage. So at top levels, it's not going to be as a big deal, I think. And so we'll probably have to look at some sort of scaling mechanic.
Yeah. Just something to keep in mind for it. if you wanted to not have it be based on wisdom, you could just do it based on dexterity of basically just being able to like aim yourself and your like attack into like the position to be able to like center it on the area where it's going to do the most damage.
Okay. That's something to keep in mind. We'll put that here. Alright, so I think this one's pretty good. I've got a pretty good idea of how I'm going to build this. And we'll see. Once again, I get very sketchy around adding damage to stuff, but I think this isn't out of bounds for how much damage Assassinate itself does, right? And since it's an aspect, you're choosing to do this over one of these other choices. That's the other thing, is all these choices have to be appealing in different circumstances. If just one is the only one that's appealing, then we're not making anything of interest, right? Alright, so on to cold. We talked about slowing the target or giving them disadvantage on an effect, or slipping and falling. I love the idea of stabbing somebody with a sword or a dagger and a gout of icy blast shoots out from them, altering the terrain around them. So either that slows everybody in a 10-foot square or causes everyone to slip and fall in a 10-foot square. What do you guys think? Good answer.
I think slip and fall.
Slip and fall. And fortunately for us, I think... Oh, it's in the DMG, I think.
And that could be a dexterity check too, so it gives the rogue the rogue could still suffer from it, but having a high dexterity, they could use it your own risk.
Yeah, I don't think that's in here. So in the DMG, there's actually rules and mechanics for ice, slippery ice. So I will probably apply that mechanic. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of this, and we'll just use the ice. Alright, so that's pretty good. Alright, now this is the one I think we have a lot of options on. Might take a little bit of work. So, wind damage. That we decided would just be force damage. And then we see this. This concerns me, though. And the reason why is because this is the least resisted element in the game, if I'm not mistaken. Or feature, or I guess you can't call it an element. Damage type. Which... It doesn't really come into play that often, though, I don't think. So...
Unless you're dealing with clerics.
Yeah, fucking clerics. Oh, you guys should see the cleric that I built. It's going through the editor right now. You guys are... I love it. I basically built a psionic cleric, and oh my god, I had so much fun with that.
Wow.
So fun.
Nice.
Fucking... I loved it. And the fighter that I built, well, I'm still figuring out the last few mechanics for the 18th level, but it basically lashes stuff with gravity. You touch somebody and they fucking fall in the wrong direction.
It's awesome.
I would be lying if I didn't say I totally took the idea from Stormlight Archives. I checked. He doesn't own the term lashing. But anyways, alright, so for wind. This seems like it should be very much utility. I love the blinding idea. I'm starting to think that these should all be AoEs of sorts. Ooh. What if you could cast the fog spell in a smaller area?
Yeah, that actually brings up a good point. I don't think we have water, do we?
No, we don't. Shame on us. Yes, ma'am. No, not till bedtime. Give me 15 more minutes.
I'm not letting him out again, so if he whines, you're gonna...
I gotta let him out?
I
Okay.
have let him out 5 times since you have been...
Shoot him!
5!
Okay, I told her what to do. A dog. We have the most obnoxious dog on the planet. He literally will whine and whine every 10 minutes to go out. But instead of going and pissing all at once, he pisses little spurts, comes in, then asks you to let him out again. Little bastard.
Nice.
But you can't leave him out there because then he'll just bark the whole time. Drives me bonkers. All right, so somebody mentioned there's not water. We could... Once again, we would have to define another damage type. Would we just use cold?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Do you plan on having these do different effects at the higher levels? Like, this is what you get at 3rd level, this is what you would get at 7th or 8th, and then at 14th. That it can also do this, because I was thinking for stone,
Ooh.
if you let it slow movement at like 3rd level, maybe once you get to 14th level, it removes the ability to fly.
Ooh, fancy. I like that. So you just gave me a really good idea. You could totally take this, like maybe the 13th level, and give each and every one of these new features. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So new options, 2 elements, and then you can expand upon them, right? So, all right, that's pretty good. I like that. I like that. We still need to figure out what we're gonna do here for win, though.
Yeah.
So, I really like the flying, and I really like the blinding. The blinding really makes sense. Really high winds. And
The wind could be the one to silence, because it could literally take the wind from their, you know, take the wind from them, knock the wind out of them, kind of thing, and that could be the silence effect.
So
There's
what
the
if?
thunder.
So this would be a good example of one that maybe starts off as blind, but then down here becomes blind or silence, or both.
Yep.
I like that. I like that a lot. All right, so let's do. Blind / deafness. No, blind. Just blind. All right. Earth, fire, wind, water. I got a little nerdy for a second. I'm all about saving the world, one, plastic cup at a time. All right. Bludgeoning or earth. We talked about altering the terrain. I love this boulder idea. Like a boulder coming out of the ground and providing cover, and maybe forcibly moving a character away from you. Like like when a character teleports onto an object and they're pushed to another area. So you stab somebody, then this thing erupts in front of you, pushing them and blocking line of sight, so they can't just straight up retaliate, and providing cover. Man.
Yeah.
And it gives you automatic hiding.
I love it. We're going to go with the boulder cover. Actually, that's another one that could be like difficult terrain on the ground by causing the ground to kind of shudder and erupt, and that at a higher... No, I like the boulder cover too much. That's dope as hell. That's some fucking Avatar Airbender shit. Some top shit right there. Alright. Lightning. I really, really like the fairy fire thing as just a feature. I think that it being an AoE, though, could be a bit of a problem. Maybe it starts off as a guiding bolt feature that only affects the target, but then at a higher level becomes fairy fire, or a similar effect. So, electricity surrounds and crackles around your target and lights them up for advantage on the next attack, but then eventually it spreads out at a higher level and affects an area of like 10 feet around the target too.
Yeah.
I like that.
Makes your target like a grounding rod, and it just works out.
This is so much fun doing it with people than by myself sitting here trying to figure out how I'm gonna do shit. Like I spent hours looking at this shit. Like, what is the best way to do this? Going through books and
That's
shit.
how they write for SNL and all these other ones. They get writing teams together in a room and pitch ideas.
Mm-hmm. All right, last but certainly not least, Thunder. We got pushback, knockdown, booming blade effect, deafening, and/or silence. I love a mini shockwave, a mini thunder wave coming off of targets, where they don't, and it may not necessarily do damage to surrounding enemies, but force them to make a save or be pushed back. And then maybe at a higher level create a similar effect to the booming blade. Or would you put the booming blade first? I really
Because
like...
each one of these is going to have a different utility in a certain spot. I mean,
Yep.
You kind of have to preemptively figure out how you might use it. But say you're being attacked by something with pack tactics and you're getting mad, you can stab them and force the other one back so they can't get that benefit.
And in my mind, that's what the idea behind this was, is somebody could shift between these different aspects of power and gain benefits in different scenarios. And the character would constantly, throughout all their character's life, would be constantly balancing these elements to the situation at hand. That's why I was very, very careful to not want to just do one that increased damage or that just did damage, because that wasn't what I wanted as because for instance at the fire, if it does too much damage, well, 90% of the time you're going to use that until the one scenario comes up where it makes sense to do this other one. But being able to trip people with icy cold blasts and them fall to the ground has a lot of benefit too. Advantage on attack rolls on the ground and disadvantage from the enemy. The lightning one, creating advantage. See, so that just might automatically light them up for advantage on the next attacks. See, that one seems like it wouldn't be quite as good as the ice, but then if we take the guiding bolt into consideration, doesn't the guiding bolt also give them a bonus to attack roll? Or is that something else? That might be the channel divinity thing.
It's advantage on the next attack.
Yeah, guiding bolt does damage when it hits and advantage on the next attack.
So I already can see an argument for that not being as good as the icy terrain, because if they fall, everyone's going to have advantage.
Except for ranged.
Ah, that's a good point.
So I mean, if you're going to take bow and arrow and you use it, you're taking away your own advantage, but...
Yeah. Fuck.
But I mean, it's... If you got your barbarian right up on him, that's going to give that guy an awesome advantage.
Yeah.
Especially...
Go ahead.
Just in terms of like leveling kind of stuff, for keeping in mind, Booming Blade is a cantrip. The Thunder Wave is level 1, and then the Blindness Deafness, that is kind of like the three basic things, is level 2. Just in terms of if you want to keep that in mind for like leveling kind of stuff.
Yeah, and also the effects of that and the duration also come into play for that sort of stuff too.
Yep.
So I'll do that. Well, somebody was gonna say something before that.
I think I said what I was going to say.
Okay. So I probably will have to look at the lightning feature a little bit better, and see, maybe adding damage to somebody else's attack. So if somebody hits with the advantage, it does additional lightning damage or something. Maybe, I don't know. I'll figure something out, because I feel like just looking at the two side by side, I feel like the icy potential. Well, see, there's a save for that though. There's a save for the fall. Yep. And if their turn comes around before anybody else's, they stand up. They're no longer fall. So maybe the lightning still is on par with it, because it's not going to go away just because they're sitting, falling, or standing. So I don't know. I'll have to figure something. I'll have to look more at that a little more closely.
What if you played with the idea of lightning leading to paralysis? Because paralysis is a status condition too.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that I had mentioned earlier, either
Okay.
stunning or paralysis, and I thought they might be too powerful. But if it was a feature that could happen, like say at 13th level, if you crit with lightning, it paralyzes them or something. Putting an additional
Okay.
condition in there that makes it harder to trigger offsets the fact that it leads to a potential deadly condition. I do like that idea, and I think maybe we'll add that as um, a comment here, because I do think that that's something that would make sense and could be doable if the mechanic was set up appropriately. We're still at Thunder though, so just having it do a knockback and not any additional damage is definitely a lot of battlefield control. Um, I can see it deafening as well. Would it be? What do you guys think? Pushback instead of? I think the booming blade will definitely be something. That feature, that mechanic, should definitely be a later feature. So let's actually put. There we go. Booming blade effect if moving. So I got to figure out which one of these features it'll fit in, but I can do that. So do we want it to do pushback, knockdown, or deafen and silence? That's too much. It's got to be just deafen, because deafen and silence is a higher level spell. What do you guys think? Should it knock back?
You,
I started to hear somebody.
Yeah, I think probably push back, knockdown kind of thing.
Okay. So we'll get rid of this.
you could always have, because and at a higher level, you could even have it be a reactive damage for something they do too. I think that was mentioned earlier, because
Yep.
thunder's not something that happens on that action. It's the lightning on the action, and the thunders comes after.
Well, yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. I was thinking like Thunder Wave,
Kinda
the
like
Thunder Wave spell, right? Where you release a booming
Yeah.
sound and it knocks people to their ass, which is why I think the Deafened was a really good
Yeah.
one. I would say Deafened would probably be
Yeah.
better than Knockdown, because once again we already have Knockdown here under cold icy terrain effect.
That's a good point. Yep.
What if you took the idea of the pushback and instead you get pushed back, almost like a defensive maneuver?
Ooh.
So you strike and then you jump back 15, 20 feet or whatever, and that also kind of opens up the playing field for the fighter to come in and maybe do what he needs to do.
I think Ian mentioned that earlier too, and we kind
Okay.
of mulled over that. It was a good idea.
So deafening and push yourself back. So it becomes more of a man. So it becomes more of a defensive ability at that point, and then that defensive idea is carried on through this next feature, which punishes them for chasing you. That makes a good evolution of this one mechanic.
Do you want to have that push yourself back, be basically like Thunderstep, where you can do damage to the area that you're leaving? Or is that too much?
I'm trying hard to avoid extra damage.
Okay.
The only reason I allowed that here was because that's the most direct use of fire, I think, and just made the most sense. Because these are already triggering off of one of the highest DPR features in the game, which is sneak attack. So adding additional damage to that directly isn't something I think that is a road we're going to take. While I do think that that is awesome, and we may very well include Thunderstep as a feature here in one of these other ones down the line. Because first of all, I love that ability, teleport and send out a Thunder Wave. Are you kidding me? Fuck yeah. So
Knocking yourself back isn't actually a bad idea either, because then that would take place of the disengage, so you'd still have a reaction available.
You mean bonus action?
Bonus action, yeah, sorry.
I agree, and that also makes dual wielding for this more appealing too. Now, because one of the big advantages, or one of the big repercussions, or not fucking word am I looking for? It's out there. One of the big drawbacks of dual wielding is that it uses your bonus action, and you can't use your cunning action when you use that. So if you wanted to dual wield, most of the time running a thunder aspect would allow you to attack somebody with a sneak attack, create a thunderous shockwave that pushed you back, getting you out of range, even if it's only 5 feet, so you can disengage without having to actually use the disengage action. I kind of like that. That's really good.
I just realized too. What if you use the push yourself back feature if you're getting sneak attack with a ranged weapon to just like kite the person?
Oh man.
Yeah. Or would it practicality though? I guess would it be more maybe just a melee only if you get pushed back? Because I can see someone just pecking somebody from 60 feet away and then die.
I'm now just envisioning every anime I've ever seen where somebody just draws a bow and a big ass shockwave is released and them just being pushed back by the force. And,
It's like a Hanzo ult.
Yeah. In what is it? In Hitman Reborn. The guy's got such a powerful attack that releases from his arm, it blasts him into the walls and shit. So what he finally has to learn is he has to blast both directions, one at the ground to keep his ass steady, and another one at the enemy so he doesn't like knock himself back.
Imagine if like you throw a dagger at somebody and this happens.
Oh man.
They're so fast you fling yourself backwards.
Very much anime sort of stuff right there. All right, we didn't get as far as I would have liked, but I think we've got some really great ideas, and I think we've got a really core idea down for this. I like this idea. I still haven't settled on a name, so feel free to toss a few out there. I think we came up with like Elemental Blade or something like that, which kind of fit. But I'm down for any other ideas. Did you guys like this? Should I do more of these?
Yeah, like I mentioned the other day, that I kind of missed the patron.
Yeah, me too. And and it's one of those things that not enough people came to. I was like, well, I could spend my time doing more things that'll be more productive, but it's not always a get. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and save this, and I think I'm going to call that a night, you guys. Thank you for joining me. I'm gonna have to come up with a name for this now if I'm gonna do it more often.
Yep.
Let's build character, building character, something like that. We'll figure something out. Obviously, I got to figure out all these other things, so if you guys got any good ideas for roguish guilty pleasures, adversaries, or benefactors, let me know. And I will try to do this again, and hopefully bring back some of the ideas that I come up with, and maybe get your feedback on them, and what you hate, what you like, and all that jazz. So, alright guys, I guess I will see you later.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for the fun.
You guys have a great night, alright?
Yep.
You too.